Hi everyone, it's me. Welcome to today's video. We are going to talk all things trilogies today. So a couple months ago, I made a video where I ranked all the duologies that I had read from worst to best. And on that video, I got so many requests from you guys to do the same thing with trilogies. And I was like, you know what? You guys are right. That is such a good idea. So we are going to be ranking all the trilogies I've read. Let's say in the past like 5 to 6 years, like we're not counting trilogies I read as a child, okay? We're counting trilogies that I've read in my adult reading life, I guess. And yeah, we're gonna go from worst to best. So this is my ultimate trilogy tier list, I guess you could say. I do have 20 trilogies behind me to talk about, so let's just get straight into it. Starting out at number 20, the worst trilogy I have read in the past 5 to 6 years. This has to go to The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. I actually read this trilogy this past summer because of season 3 of the show coming out. I felt like I wanted to read the trilogy before we got the final season, and I just like going into this did not expect great things. Like, I'm gonna be completely honest, I went into this expecting that it wouldn't be my favorite trilogy in the world, but I did expect to have at least a fun, silly time with it. If you have not heard of The Summer I Turned Pretty, it's basically a YA romance trilogy. We follow our main character Belly as she spends her summers with this other family, like family friends, and in that other family there are 2 brothers that she gets intertwined with, you know, has romantic experiences with both of them. We have a whole brothers love triangle kind of a thing. It's just like a little bit of a silly story, if I'm gonna be completely honest, and I don't really actually love the show. I think I love more the community of the show and what it's created with everyone like theorizing or talking about it or choosing teams. Like, it just like the experience of watching the show feels very nostalgic because I grew up in the era of like Team Edward or Team Jacob or Team Damon versus Team Stefan. We could also go all the way and say Team Aang or Team Zuko. So the show has just brought back so many of those fun memories of just, you know, being part of a fandom. And so I wanted to have a fun, silly summer day reading this trilogy, and I did read this entire trilogy in one day. They're very short and easy to read, but I think I'm just past the age of a book like this. If I'm gonna be completely honest, maybe I would have enjoyed it more if I read it younger, but I just could not stand being in Belly's mind. Most of the trilogy is written in her POV. We do get a little bit from some of the brothers' POVs, but for the most part we're in her head, and she is quite a self-centered character. She thinks about herself a lot. She was just very annoying to follow, so I really did not like this trilogy, but that's okay. In 19th place, we actually have another romance trilogy. This one is more a trilogy of interconnected standalone romances, but The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. In this little trilogy, we have The Friend Zone, we have the Happily Ever playlist, and we have, what's the last one? Life's Too Short. It's on the bookshelf behind you. That's why I just like looked around. I dove into this after reading more of Abby's recent books, which I do love her like newer set of books, but I wanted to give her backlist a try, so I dove into this entire trilogy, and I just have to say her newer books are so much better. You can really see the growth in her writing, which I think is absolutely wonderful, but these older books from her just did not do it for me. I think they all had very interesting premises that I was excited to read about, but as for the execution of all of them, I think pretty much every single resolution to these romance books just kind of threw away all of the issues we were going through in the first half of the books. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves about romance books in general, is when throughout the entire plot we are dealing with these very specific issues and we're just wondering like by the end, like how are we going to solve this issue? And then right when we get to the end, the issue just gets explained away, or it's like love is the answer to everything, and like we don't get a practical answer to anything we're solving. Like, I mean, I don't want to say too much about the plot points to spoil things, but in this one, for example, our main protagonist is struggling with the fact that she will likely have issues having children because of certain procedures she has to go through, and that issue in this book just really gets tossed aside at the end of this book. That was a big theme for this entire trilogy. I think the writing is still quite good if you're looking at line to line writing, but in terms of the storytelling and how things are resolved, that was my biggest issue with this Friend Zone trilogy. So didn't love those. Next up in 18th place, The Inheritance Games trilogy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is a YA mystery trilogy, which actually has a really fun concept. So we follow Avery, who is not very well off. She's sort of lost her parents, and so it's just her and her sister. She is in high school, and one day she gets pulled aside, taken aside, and is told that this random billionaire stranger has passed away and has left her basically his entire estate, his entire inheritance, everything. And so she goes to, I guess, like claim her estate, see what she's inherited. And as she goes, she's obviously wondering, like, why has this stranger left me everything when he has an entire family of his own? He has 4 grandsons. Like, he just has so many other people that he could have left his inheritance to, but instead he's left it to her. So we get into this whole story. The billionaire was also always very like inclined to leave riddles and puzzles for his family, his grandsons, and so Avery starts getting like really intertwined with that, and she has to start trying to solve all of these puzzles while getting to know these grandsons and the rest of the family. So I found the first book honestly to be very fun. It wasn't like the best read in the world for me, but I did love the riddles, the puzzles aspect of it. I think it flew by really fast. I think the plot was pretty tight, I would say, in the first book, but as I went along in the trilogy, a lot of it just started feeling very repeaty, like we were just doing the same things over and over again, or we were just introducing new puzzles just to introduce puzzles, and it got to a point where like I just didn't believe the plot anymore. Like I couldn't get into it. I just felt so distracted by the fact that everything was becoming so absurd just to have like another plot twist, just to have another riddle to solve. Like it didn't really make sense to me, the things the characters were going through. So by the end of the third book, I honestly just got really bored of doing pretty much the same thing over and over again, and I just wish the trilogy expanded to something else. Like maybe we could have gone somewhere else physically, maybe we could have dealt with another rich person who likes to do riddles, but it just felt like we were, just going round and round in circles. So the first book was fun, but didn't continue very strong. In 17th place, we actually have our first fantasy trilogy of the list. So the Emily Wilde series by Heather Fawcett. So we have Encyclopedia of Fairies, Map of the Otherlands, and Compendium of Lost Tales. These are cozy fairy fantasies. So throughout the entire trilogy, we follow Emily as she basically researches different aspects of fairies and fairy life and the fairy species. So in the first book, she is trying to study these like rare types of fairies to include in her encyclopedia of fairies that she's writing. In the second one, she is trying to map out all the locations of fairy doors and like where you can find the fairy doors to the fairy world. And in the third book, she is investigating into the inner workings of a fairy court. This first book was really super cozy. I liked the sort of wintry, cozy log cabin vibes, like very log cabin, very winter. We were literally chopping wood in this book. I found the vibes to be wonderful. This was, I think, my first true like cozy fantasy I had read in my adult years, and so I was kind of just starting to dabble into the genre, and I realized that I love cozy fantasy for about 100 pages, and after 100 pages I start to get bored, and that's what happened with this one. For some reason, I love just the initial setup of a cozy fantasy, but a lot of the time when cozy fantasies start getting deeper into the plot, I start to lose interest. I don't know why. Maybe it's just this type of cozy fantasy is just not the genre for me, but I didn't hate this book. I actually quite enjoyed this one enough to continue on in the series. But then as the series went on, I just like continued to lose more and more interest. As we went on through the series, I think the books became more plot heavy, which initially I thought was a good thing, but then I realized as we were getting more plot heavy, that cozy vibe was disappearing. And the whole reason for me diving into these books was I wanted that cozy vibe, but then that was just getting lost as the trilogy went on. I also didn't really love the romance in this book. The way our protagonist was describing her love interest throughout the entire trilogy was just like, she would say things like, oh, she just like caught a glimpse of him and he had this really dark, sinister look in his eyes, and she was just like completely terrified of him, but not in a good way. And I don't know if I like that in a love interest, to like have your protagonist look at her love interest and be like, wow, he looks really grotesque and weird right now. I don't know if I like it. And having that continue on and on and on throughout the trilogy. Like it wasn't even just the first book that she was thinking that about him, and then the more she got to know him, she changed her mind. It was literally up till the end of the third book that she would still get these moments of like, she would look at him and be like, I'm so freaked out by him. So I just didn't understand the romance really, and the series was just just kind of like okay for me. I probably didn't have to continue reading on throughout this entire trilogy, but I finished to the end because honestly, the covers of these books are so cute and I just really wanted them all. And I know that's like, we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't just like buy books and continue series because we think they're pretty, but we don't like what's inside the books. But we all have our weaknesses. That was my story with the Emily Wilde trilogy. And then in 16th place, we have another fairy trilogy. So The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I think we all know what this trilogy is about at this point, but we follow Jude, whose parents were murdered when she was younger, and then she was taken into the fairyland, sort of adopted into this fairy family. And so she and her twin are humans living in the fairy world. And throughout this trilogy, you know, she goes to fairy school, she's trying to fit in with the fairies, and eventually we get involved with the fairy political court, all of the fairy royalty, and all of that. So this is a YA trilogy. I think when I was reading these, I actually enjoyed the books. I think they were pretty fun. They weren't my favorite series in the world, and I honestly didn't understand a lot of the romance, but what I liked about these books were sort of the political maneuverings of everything. And I read this sort of at the beginning of my like fairy journey, like into this sort of like fairy fantasy romance genre. So I thought it was fun, but I think honestly, as Holly Black started like releasing more books in this world, like she wrote the duology spin-off about Jude's brother after this trilogy, it kind of tainted my initial experience while reading this trilogy because I didn't love the spin-off books, and I feel like reading the spin-off books sort of ruined my overall look on this world of Elfhame in general. And I think that is just so sad to think about because I did enjoy these books, but I think just like as time is passing, I just like don't really think about these books anymore or don't really care about them. Like they didn't really reach that deep into my heart. So I thought these books were just okay. I remember liking the first book. I remember the second book not being great for me. And then I think the third book pulled it all together. So that is the Cruel Prince trilogy. Okay, we are trucking along. We are at 15th place, I believe. We're going back to romance. This is the Skyland trilogy by Kennedy Ryan. So the first book is hold on, I always forget the names of these books every single time. I don't know why these names are so hard to remember. The first book is called Before I Let Go, and then we have this one, I think, This Could Be Us, and the third book is on my shelf behind you as well. Where is it? Can't Get Enough. So those are the three in this world. It's another interconnected romance standalone trilogy, and each book follows a different friend in this friend group of adult women, which I actually really love. I generally like seeking out romances that follow adults dealing with adult things. And I think with this series, I really have to give it to Kennedy Ryan for creating adult characters that were actually going through adult struggles, like real life adult struggles that I'm sure a lot of adults could relate to. So love that. I think overall, I love the premise of every single book in the series. They all had a lot of promise, and that's why I continued reading through them. But I think just like a common theme with my reading experience of the Skyland series was just this feeling of being underwhelmed. I think I had heard a lot about these books from people who had said like the chemistry in these books are like wonderful. The banter, the tension, the things these adults go through. I had just heard so many good things about all of that. And I think every single book in the series just slightly underwhelmed me. Like I enjoyed the premise of them all. I enjoyed the setup of them all. But for whatever reason, I just could not connect to any of these characters. I feel like these books felt very monotone throughout. And I honestly just didn't feel the chemistry between any of the love interests in the series. And chemistry, I feel like, is just such a personal thing that honestly a lot of the time can't be explained. It's just such a personal preference thing. You just feel the chemistry or you don't. And I didn't feel the chemistry in these books. So I thought these books were okay. I didn't hate any of them. They were all probably an average of like 3-star reads for me. So yeah, these ones were just middle of the road for me. In 14th place, we are going back to YA fantasy. We have Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I do love Stephanie Garber so much. I love her whimsical writing. I love the worlds that she creates. And I think Caraval is just such a fun trilogy. Like if you want puzzles, if you want mystery, if you want a circus kind of whimsical environment, definitely try Caraval. Throughout this trilogy, we follow two sisters that get whisked away into this mysterious traveling game that just pops up randomly in different locations at different times of the year. I honestly really love this trilogy. Definitely takes an interesting format where in book 1, we follow one sister, book 2, we follow the other sister, and in book 3, we follow a combination of both of them. I honestly think Caraval, the first book, was my favorite favorite in this trilogy just because I love Scarlet, our first sister that we follow. I do have a special place in my heart for Tella as well, but Scarlet is like my girl in this trilogy, and so Caraval, the first book, was definitely my favorite. I also think just because we were getting the introduction into Caraval in general, I love just like not knowing what was going on in these books. And I think Stephanie Garber is really good at doing that, at crafting a world where like you're not even sure what you're supposed to be doing in this world, but you're just trying to get by and figure it out with your main characters as you read along. So yeah, really like Caraval, and yeah, we're at the point in my trilogy list where like from now onwards, these are all trilogies that I would recommend. Next up, we have Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, a fun high fantasy trilogy. We just have a crew of mismatched characters with a very strong found family vibe. I guess in the first book, we have this heist where we're basically trying to take out the ruler of this world, the Lord Ruler. And so our mismatched, misfit group of characters gets together and tries to pull this off. We're in this really cool world with a very detailed magic system where if you are a certain type of person, like if you have the affinity to do magic in this world, you can ingest metals and use the power that these metals give you to basically do different types of magic. And that is such a simple, rudimentary way of describing the magic system in this world. It's a lot more detailed than that, but you just have to read the series to learn all of it. I think this is definitely a solid fantasy series. It's not my favorite from Brandon Sanderson. This was the first Brandon Sanderson book that I had ever read, and I just think like going into it and knowing Brandon Sanderson's reputation, I had such high expectations. Like I was expecting to be blown away by this trilogy, and I think most people are blown away by this trilogy, but I didn't feel like completely like whisked away with this one. I did really enjoy this first book. It was a wonderful read. I'm pretty sure I did give this first book a 5-star, but I think as we continued to go on throughout the series, the second book honestly fell a little bit short for me, and then the third book I think was quite strong, but I was already just kind of tired of the world, or like I was just kind of checked out by the time I read the third book, that I don't think I gave the third book a fair chance. And so overall the series just, I don't know, went downhill for me as it went on, but I'm definitely in the minority with that opinion. And I do think this trilogy is still quite strong. It just didn't fully work for me. I also think Brandon Sanderson's writing is very, very plain, and he also admits that about his own writing. He writes very plain, very purposefully, because he just wants to tell stories to you in a very straightforward manner. And I was just trying to settle into his very plain type of writing. I come from a background where I love reading like whimsical, very descriptive types of books with flowery writing, and so trying to adjust to his very plain writing was a little difficult for me. I think I have gotten more used to it now because obviously I'm reading the Stormlight Archive and absolutely loving it, devouring it, but yeah, the writing in this was just a little too plain for me. Next up, are we at 12 now, 12th place, but we have the Broken Blades trilogy by Corland. This is a multi-POV romantasy set in a world loosely inspired by Korea, which is super fun. Kind of a similar premise, but moves in a very different direction. But we basically follow a group of very mismatched characters trying to pull off a heist. So in this one, we follow 6 liars. So they're all very untrustworthy characters. We have like an assassin, a poison maiden, a strong arm, just like a lot of characters who do kind of bad things, but are all used to working by themselves and not trusting anyone else, but they're all hired by a mysterious person to get together and assassinate the enemy king. So throughout the trilogy, they have to learn to trust each other, to work with each other, and because we're following this group of liars, like they're all liars, they are all trying to keep secrets, we have this really fun story filled with betrayals and plot twists, like shocking reveals, and this trilogy was just so fun for me to read. It's not the most nuanced writing in the world. It's very like blatant, in your face, sensational, not very like flowy, smooth writing, I would say. It's a little clunky at parts, but I think overall the story is just so fun, so fast paced that I was just carried along on this fun adventure with all of these characters. And by the end of the trilogy, I just loved these characters so much. I genuinely had a lot of fun with them. And I do have to give my appreciation to Corland for not being afraid to kill off a character. I think a lot of romantasies these days are a little too safe. Like they play it too safe where like no one of importance dies. Like if someone dies, it's always like the friend, or it's who's gonna die. My Corland doesn't care about those rules. No one is safe. So I really enjoyed this trilogy. I thought it was really fun. And then in 11th place, to finish off this first pile of books, we're going back to Abby Jimenez with the Part of Your World trilogy, another interconnected standalone romance trilogy, but this one was just so much better than the Friend Zone, so much better. So this one has Part of Your World, Yours Truly, and Just for the Summer. Just for the Summer is like still one of my favorite romance books to this day. It was perfection. It was so good. I think in these three books in particular, Abby was just so good at integrating deeper, just like more fiction stories with romance and having these sort of subplots like run alongside each other. I think she is so good at that. So I'm obsessed with this trilogy, with these books. Definitely Abby's like strongest books, I think, are in this trilogy. But yeah, we just follow a bunch of different romances in this interconnected series. And that finishes our first pile, which means we are going to move on to our top 10 list of trilogies. In 10th place, and these are all trilogies that I'm obsessed with, that I love, I will recommend every single day of my life to anyone who asks. We have Belladonna by Adalyn Grace in 10th place. I'm obsessed with this trilogy. I love it so much. I honestly think it's a little bit underrated. Like, I do see some people talk about it sometimes, but against other sort of YA romantasy trilogies in this genre, I feel like this one doesn't get talked about enough. But this is like a gothic romantasy. So much fun. The writing really reminds me of Stephanie Garber, but more gothic. So in this one, we follow Signa, who has always been cursed by death, essentially. Like, when she was a baby, her parents hosted this big ball where everyone got poisoned and everyone died except for her. And throughout her life, as she's been passed from caregiver to caregiver, from relative to relative, everyone around her just like continues to die. And so she genuinely knows death, like the Grim Reaper, basically, as an actual character. And she's just like, Death, why do you keep following me around? Like, what is going on? So at the beginning of the story, Death kind of makes a promise to her, and he's like, you know what? No, like, I'm your friend. I'm gonna take care of you. I'm gonna give you such a good life. And somehow, in a miracle, Signa is taken in by these relatives that she didn't even know she had, and starts living her life in this big gothic mansion, which is really wonderful for her. But when she arrives, she realizes that, there are some mysteries within this family as well. There is still some death following her. We have a little bit of a murder mystery situation. We have a bit of a ghostly situation. And I loved this trilogy so much. All three of these books I loved, but the third book, Wisteria, was my absolute favorite. Throughout the entire series, we have like Regency era courting vibes with like murder mystery, with ghosts, with gothic, with these immortal, like long living, forever living characters too, like the fates and death and all of that. So yeah, I'm obsessed with this trilogy. So good. In 9th place, we are going over to the Grishaverse. The Grishaverse did appear in my duologies video twice, but of course we have to give our respects to Shadow and Bone, the original trilogy of the Grishaverse by Leigh Bardugo. So this one really just sets up the world. We follow Alina, who is an orphan. She has grown up alongside her best friend Mal her entire life at this orphanage, but they're now grown up, kind of, they're young adults, and they're both working for the military in different positions. So Alina is a cartographer, but secretly this entire time she has been keeping these magical talents, these magical skills secret, and as they start to emerge, as she starts getting discovered for the powers she has, she gets whisked away on this whole big fantasy adventure. So that's a very simple synopsis. And this trilogy was so good. I think it gets overlooked a lot as it's compared to the Six of Crows duology. But if you haven't gotten into the Grishaverse, I would highly recommend reading this trilogy before diving into Six of Crows, because this actually takes place first. You get a lot more world building in this one. There are so many wonderful characters that I love, like side characters that I'm obsessed with. And it's just like really fun, quintessential YA fantasy in the absolute best way possible. So yeah, I love Shadow and Bone. I'm also realizing as I'm holding this book up, the top of this cover is cut off. Something went wrong with the printing, because there is like a white line here at the bottom, and then at the top you can see like the Grishaverse text is literally cut off. So something weird happened with this printing, and maybe that's why. Did I get these ones from Book Outlet? No, I think I got these ones from Indigo. They weren't even Book Outlet. Anyways, something weird happened with this printing, but I love the trilogy anyway. In 8th place, we're going back to the lovely Stephanie Garber with the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. This trilogy literally has my whole heart. I love this world. We are set in the same world as the Caraval series, but in a slightly different location, so it's kind of an interconnected world. Like, imagine we're in the same world, but we just go to a different country. That's the connection between Once Upon a Broken Heart and Caraval. There also are some overlapping characters, but Once Upon a Broken Heart definitely has the edge over Caraval for me. I just love the whimsy in this. I think I love the characters a lot more. If you're looking for something easy to read, it has a very fairy tale vibe. And if you're looking for your next favorite book couple that will like stay in your heart forever and ever and ever, pick up this trilogy. It is so, so wonderful. Stephanie Garber is also releasing a novella that's based in this trilogy, so I'm so excited to read that one. This trilogy will always just have a special place in my heart. I still love it so much. I think it'd be interesting rereading these ones because I did read them quite a while ago, but I do honestly think if I reread these, I think they would still hold up. The second book in the series, incredible. Perfection. The ending of the second book really hit me hard and has one of my favorite tropes of all time in it. But yeah, whimsical, fairy tale, wonderful. In 7th place, we're really in YA fantasy land right now, but I have The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni, a trilogy that I actually recently finished at the end of 2025. But in this one, we follow Kiva, who is a healer. She's been in prison her whole life for very unjust reasons. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time when she was a child, and she was taken into prison literally as a kid. So she has grown up in this prison and has found her place there as the healer, but the prison is just like not a good place to be, like, obviously. And in this world, there is a rebellion on the rise. So at the start of this book, the rebel queen has been captured and brought to the prison, and Kiva is actually assigned to heal the rebel basically back to consciousness because the rebel queen is currently unconscious, and the rulers of this world or this prison want the rebel queen to be conscious to be able to take part in these trials that will determine her guilt or innocence. So that kicks off this fantasy trilogy, and this just gave me all the feelings that I love in a YA fantasy. I do still love reading YA fantasy to this day. I think it just gives me all these nostalgic feelings of like why I fell in love with reading in the first place. And this series was just so perfect for that. It gave you all the elements that you crave in a series like this, but also with fun twists that kept you on the edge of your seat, that kept you surprised along the way. So although I would say the overall trajectory of the plot of this trilogy was predictable, the way you got there was not predictable. Like, there were so many fun twists that caught me off guard. The found family in this book was also incredible. The secondary characters are some of my favorite ever, and it is one of those trilogies that gets better as you go along. So The Prison Healer, I think I rated at 3.5. Like, it was just fun for me, but the second and third books were incredible, like so good. So highly recommend. In 6th place, we have one of my favorite authors of all time. So The Shades of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab. Oh, I'm so obsessed with V.E. Schwab and her writing, but to me, this is her quintessential fantasy trilogy because she writes a lot of different subgenres of fantasy. I think her latest releases have been more like historical fiction with like slightly magical elements, but this is like her quintessential fantasy world, and I'm obsessed with this world. The world building in this one is just so cool. We are set in London, but we have parallel universe Londons. So we have 4 versions of our world. We have Red London, White London, Grey London, and Black London. And these worlds sort of like sit parallel with each other, and there's a rare type of person that is able to traverse these worlds. And our protagonist, Kel, is one of those people. So at the start of the series, he's been taken in by the royal family, and he is working with them as sort of a messenger in between worlds. But as he's going about his business, he bumps into this thief. He comes across this like weird object that seems to be instilled with this very dark magic, and we go in this big downward spiral from there. This very fun downward spiral from there. I'm obsessed with this. I think the atmosphere in these books is so wonderful because we have these different Londons that all have such different feelings. Like Red London is sort of our main London. It's where our characters live, and it's the most like well balanced with a good level of magic in it. But then we have our other worlds, like Grey London has basically no magic at all. White London has been so overrun by magic that everything seems just very faded at this point because magic's been so overused, it's sort of taken over everyone. And then Black London, we don't go to Black London. Like, you don't want to go to Black London. It's a world that is basically imploded on itself, and the doors to Black London have been sealed for a very good reason. So we just have this wonderful world, very urban feeling, very gritty feeling, and I'm also obsessed with these characters, obviously. So yeah, Shades of Magic. Love it. Are we at our top 5? We're at our top 5. Okay, in 5th place, very big change in tone. We have the Beartown trilogy by Fredrik Backman. Oh my goodness. I feel like I don't have to talk about this one too much because I have been raving about this trilogy and Fredrik Backman in general for the entire year of 2025. But this one is a contemporary fiction trilogy. We're set in a small town that is basically ruled by hockey, and we get the point of views from just like everyone in this small town. We get characters that are part of this hockey team. We get like the coach of the hockey team. We get mothers, like parents of the hockey players. We get the person who owns the bar that is across from the arena. And we see them as this one tragic incident occurs in this town just as the hockey team is like gaining success and they're about to go to this like big championship game. Something horrible happens and we see how that ripples to all of the people in this town and how everyone is affected by it in different ways. And you just have to read this book to really get the full impacts of the story. It is just such a well-crafted story that feels so real. Like, it feels like it could be something that has happened in real life. In fact, something like this probably has happened many times in the real world, unfortunately. But it's just such a strong read and a very interesting way of telling a story where you get this really bird's eye point of view of this town. It's not like you don't get very deep into the characters, because you do, especially by the end of the trilogy. Like, you do get really deep into all these characters, but at the same time, you just get this like big general view of the town and like what everyone is feeling and like how high the tensions are. It's just so good. So definitely one of my favorite trilogies of all time. That is Beartown. In 4th place, we have the Greenbone Saga. So Jade City is actually the first book in the series, but I still don't have a physical copy of it, which I think is just such a crime because I read the first book on Kindle. But yeah, this trilogy is by Fonda Leigh. Wonderful trilogy. Another one where you just have to read it to really experience it. I guess kind of similar to the Beartown trilogy, where you do follow a whole bunch of different POVs. So you get this big picture view of a lot of different political clashings. And I think in that way it is very similar to Beartown, but obviously very different because this is a political urban fantasy trilogy. But in this one we follow various characters from 2 main clans as they just like clash with each other. Like, there's a lot of clan war politics in this one, like fighting over land territory, fighting over resources. We're set in a world that's loosely based on Hong Kong, and we have these particular humans in this world who have an affinity to wield jade, and jade is our magical substance in this world. So a certain like bloodline of people, I guess, can handle jade where they wear it and then harness the jade to make themselves stronger. But not everyone can deal with jade, because the more you use jade, the more you sort of like lose your mind, the more you sort of get addicted to it. So there's a lot of downsides of using jade as well. But at the start of the series, this new drug has been created, and this drug basically allows anyone to be able to use jade without like going crazy. And so we need to figure out how to regulate this, how to control it. And then we just go on this big generational, political, familial story as we follow different generations of this clan, of this family, and it's just so wonderful. It takes you in all these different directions that you wouldn't expect. Another trilogy that you really just need to experience to know. Like, if you know, you know. But I'm obsessed with this trilogy. Wonderful. And now, to get into 3rd place, Red Rising by Pierce Brown, Arc 1. I'm treating Arc 1 as a trilogy, so this is just absolutely wonderful. We're set in a dystopian space environment where humans are needing to be sent to Mars to live because the Earth has been overpopulated. So our main character, Darrow, is a red. Everyone's been sort of like distributed into these different color factions, and red is at the very bottom. They are treated as slaves. They have been sent to Mars as the guinea pigs, essentially, and also to help mine a substance that will help everyone else be able to live on Mars more comfortably, like to be able to breathe the air. So Darrow has lived this very oppressed life with his faction of red people, but there is a rebellion on the rise, and Darrow finds himself like recruited by this rebellion, and he is tasked with an assignment to disguise himself as a gold and infiltrate this gold academy. And gold are the people that are on the top. That's what kickstarts our Red Rising adventure, and we just go on from there. This series has my whole heart. Red Rising, again, this is another trilogy where the first book was just sort of average to me and I didn't understand the hype, but as I continued reading, like Golden Sun really convinced me on this world, and Morningstar just like was the cherry on top. Like, wonderful, one of my favorite reads of this year, and I'm so excited to get into arc 2. This book really explores characters that are so complex. Like, you love these characters, but you hate these characters. There will be characters that I have hated throughout the entire story, but when those hated characters die, Pierce Brown somehow makes me feel bad for those deaths, like still makes me mourn for the deaths of these characters that do despicable things that are horrible. But he really opens your eyes to the fact that all these characters are humans just put in these different circumstances, and that's why these humans believe in these different things. Like, they really truly are brainwashed, and that's a big theme in this series in general, like brainwashing, like how the government can brainwash you so deeply. That's Red Rising. Wonderful. Okay, number 2 trilogy. We're getting serious, guys. This is The Poppy War for me by R.F. Kuang. I'm gonna start like crying just from like thinking about this series. It is a lot, okay? Do I need to explain the premise of the Poppy War? I feel like we all kind of know what it's about at this point, but we have this world that is split into the Chinese zodiac, essentially. So all of our different provinces are labeled after all of the animals in the Chinese zodiac. And the Rooster province is sort of like bottom tier province. And our protagonist, Rin, is from the Rooster province. She is also an orphan, but she's very dedicated to make her way up the rankings. She really wants to join this elite academy. And so at the beginning of the story, we follow her as she's younger and she's like studying for this academy as she takes her test, her entry test to get in. And I don't want to say anything more. I don't want to say anything else about the series. You have to read it. We get into this very like war-torn situation, and it's a book that really emphasizes morally good versus morally bad, or like what you do for the greater good. Where's that line? Like, where do you set that line while in a place of war, where if you step over that line, you are now a bad person? How far can you push that line while trying to feel guilt-free in a war where you're forced to do these terrible things? This series absolutely wrecked me. Absolutely wrecked me. I still don't think, like, to this day there has been another series that has emotionally impacted me as much as this one has. I mean, like, Beartown and Red Rising have come close, but I feel like still this one tops it. Like, truly broke my soul. I kind of want to reread this trilogy, but I'm also scared to like face those feelings again, because I've been recently rereading books and I've been discovering that like sometimes when you go back to the beginning, you get so much more out of it because you get a lot more like foreshadowing and like following these characters, knowing what they've already done or like what they're going to do in the future sometimes like hurts in the best way possible. But that's The Poppy War. So good. And you're probably wondering at this point, Jamie, what has topped The Poppy War for you? What is your number 1 series? It has to be The Hunger Games. It has to be The Hunger Games. I feel like nothing can top this. Maybe it's for nostalgia reasons. I don't know, but like The Hunger Games, like when I think of a quintessential trilogy, it's The Hunger Games. Like, it has to be number 1. And I actually haven't reread these books in the past 5 years, so it like shouldn't technically be in these lists, but I did read the prequels in the past 5 years. So I feel like it does belong in this list just because of those reasons. Like, I have revisited this series, even if I haven't reread like these specific books in the original trilogy. I mean, do I need to explain The Hunger Games? I feel like I don't have to, but like, it's number 1, okay? It's number 1. And I'm just so impressed at how Suzanne Collins has been able to go back to this world and write these prequels that feel so like they really belong with this original trilogy. They feel like no time has passed, but at the same time also adds a whole different perspective where like now we're all adults. Like, as an audience for this trilogy, we're all adults, and reading the prequels now as adults hits in such a different way, where like when we were reading these books, we were all like younger, right? Like, I mean, I was younger. So seeing all of these young kids really like enter these games hits so different now. Reading it as an adult like really makes everything feel so much more horrific, and like I truly don't understand how I handled these books at a younger age emotionally, but I guess we're stronger than we think. Like, young people are so strong. Like, we were so strong reading these as a young audience. But yeah, Hunger Games tops everything for me. But that wraps up our trilogy list. Those are the 20 trilogies I have read in the past 5 to 6 years. I do also actually want to give a shout out to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which I read a while ago, definitely more than like 5-6 years ago. I think I read it like 10 years ago, if I'm going to be completely honest, and probably deserves to be part of this list, but I feel like it's just been so long. I feel like I can't judge it fairly. I also do think I read the Lord of the Rings trilogy when I was too young, and it's actually a series that I want to reread very soon this year. So yeah, Lord of the Rings trilogy reread will be coming at some point soon, hopefully. I'll probably vlog the entire experience, but yeah, I feel like that is just another, like, it's a quintessential fantasy series that I need to experience in my adult years, and so I really, really want to get into that this year. Also, I probably should have given you this disclaimer at the beginning, but this list is just for fantasy trilogies that I've actually completed. Like, I have read books 1 to 3 and they're complete, because I do realize I am in the middle of quite a few more trilogies where only like 2 of the books are out and I'm waiting on the 3rd one. But yeah, obviously these are just the complete trilogies that I've read. But yeah, that wraps it up for today. So I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, let me know what your favorite trilogy is. If you like me, subscribe, do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!